My name is Isabel Quinn. I was 29, stuck in a dead-end administrative job at a tech startup I had no say in, no stake in, and no future with. And apparently, according to my now ex-boyfriend, I wasn't built for business. I was emotional, soft, too sensitive. His final words before walking out? Be honest, Izzy. You'll never own anything but your tears. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I didn't even drink. I sat on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinets, and stared at the note I'd scribbled in my journal months before. Someday I want to own something that can't be taken from me. Ryan had taken everything else. My peace, my confidence, and the years I'd spent building him up while shrinking myself. But he couldn't take that line. That hope. That night, something shifted. I pulled out my laptop. I didn't know exactly what I was building, but I knew why. I Googled things like how to start a small business and grants for women entrepreneurs. And by morning, I had a name, a bare-bones website, and a list of every woman I'd ever seen get talked down to in a meeting. They were my target audience. I didn't know how to do it all, but I knew how to listen. And I knew there were thousands of women who'd been made to feel small, just like me. So I started small, branding, consulting. Not for the big companies that'd laugh me out of the room, but for people like me. Side hustlers, creatives, women with one good idea and no clue how to sell it. And I worked. God, I worked. By day, I was still an assistant at that tech startup. By night, I built pitches, stayed up until 3 a.m. on client calls, used my lunch breaks to write blog posts on branding psychology, and invested every dime I didn't need for food or rent into better tools. I made mistakes, plenty. My first business card had a typo. My second client ghosted me after I spent 10 hours on a free mock-up. My website crashed more times than I care to admit, but every time I failed, I thought of Ryan. His smug little smirk when I told him about my dream, the way he laughed like he was watching a sitcom, and the words, "You'll never own a business." That voice became my fuel. 3 months in, I landed my first paying client, a boutique jewelry brand run by a single mom named Talia, who'd been burned by 3 overpriced marketing firms. I charged her $400. She cried when she saw her new logo and tagline. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just about proving Ryan wrong. This was about proving every woman like Talia right. We deserved better branding, better respect, better results. By month 6, I had 4 repeat clients, a waiting list, and my first big decision, quit the job that drained me or keep playing it safe. My hands were shaking when I handed in my notice. My boss looked surprised. "Are you sure you're ready?" I looked him straight in the eye and said, "I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm already doing it." And then, exactly 11 months and 6 days after Ryan packed his box and laughed in my face, I got an application in my inbox. A job candidate, resume attached, cover letter neatly formatted. I stared at the name, Ryan Anderson, looking for a position in client relations. The irony? My company now had 14 employees, and I was the CEO. I stared at his name for a solid 10 minutes, thinking it had to be a mistake. Ryan Anderson, applying for a role in client relations at my company. The same company that hadn't even existed the day he left me with nothing but silence and judgment. The resume was painfully familiar. Same formatting I'd helped him tweak years ago when he was trying to land his first junior marketing job. Same language, same tone. Except now, he was jobless, and I was the one holding the power he once mocked me for dreaming of. I didn't reply immediately. I didn't need to. Instead, I did what I always do. I sat with it. I breathed through the rush of adrenaline. I walked to the window of my modest but beautiful office space downtown, just blocks away from where he once told me I'd never make it out of admin hell. Funny how the world shifts. The next morning, I called in my COO, Elena, one of the most brilliant and loyal people I've ever met. She knew my story. She'd been one of my first hires when I could finally afford a second pair of hands. We had built this company together, brick by digital brick. Guess who applied? I asked, sliding my screen toward her. She read the name, blinked, then smirked. You've got to be kidding me. I wish. She leaned back. What do you want to do? I thought about it. The petty part of me wanted to delete the application or send him a rejection letter so cold it would make him shiver in his apartment. But another part, the smarter, quieter part, knew this was bigger. This wasn't about revenge. This was about closure, about letting him see who I became without his voice in my head. Schedule him, I said. Next Tuesday. I'll take the interview myself. Elena raised an eyebrow. You sure? I smiled. Never been more sure. The day of the interview, I wore red. Not just any red, power red. Fitted blazer, subtle lipstick, hair smooth, sleek, pulled back like the version of myself I only used to imagine. I didn't look like the girl he left, and that was the point. When he walked in, he didn't see me at first. He saw the receptionist, the team moving through the open layout office. He saw the framed client success stories, the top 100 female-founded startups plaque by the elevator, the custom neon sign that said, "Made by women, for everyone." Then I stepped out of the meeting room. Ryan. He turned, casual smile on his face, until it hit him. I saw it. The flicker, the gulp, the awkward twitch in his jaw when recognition dropped like a brick on his chest. Izzy? I smiled like I'd never been called that name by someone who used to say it with disdain. Welcome. Follow me. He was quiet as we walked past the office kitchen, past the brainstorming board where 3 of my interns were mapping out a new campaign for a nonprofit we were working with. He didn't ask questions. He didn't speak. He sat across from me in the glass-walled room we used for high-level meetings. I opened my notebook like this was just another Tuesday. So, I said, tell me, what attracted you to this position? I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I didn't even breathe hard, but I saw his hands, fidgeting, twisting the cuff of his sleeve. I didn't realize this was your company. I smiled lightly, and yet here you are. He gave a tight laugh. I guess I underestimated you. Most people do, I said. He tried to recover, talked about how he'd grown, his experience, his renewed hunger for creative work. But I wasn't listening to his pitch. I was watching the man who once told me I'd never be more than someone's assistant, beg for a chance to work at the company I built from scratch. He didn't know that the woman sitting across from him had been the one silently watching, quietly building, every single time he laughed at her dreams. By the end of the interview, I closed my notebook slowly. Thanks, Ryan. We'll be in touch. He stood, uncertain. You probably won't hire me, huh? I tilted my head. We'll let you know. He didn't deserve to know what I'd decided yet, not until I was ready to give him the answer he never saw coming. I could have rejected him the next day. I could have had HR send a polite, automated thank you but no thank you email like we did for dozens of other applicants. But I didn't, because deep down I wasn't looking for revenge. I wanted understanding, closure. I needed to see if he even remembered the damage he'd done, and part of me, maybe the last naive fragment, wanted to believe he'd changed. I brought the team together the next day. Elena, Marcy from HR, even Julian from branding. We sat around the conference table, and I asked the question I'd never thought I'd be in a position to ask. What do you think about Ryan? Elena didn't even blink. As a person or as a candidate? Start with candidate. Marcy opened her notes. He's got experience, sure. Polished resume. But he didn't ask a single question about our culture, our clients, or even our mission. Honestly, he seemed more focused on proving he belonged than showing what he could offer. Julian raised a brow. He talked about elevating personal brands like it was 2015. No mention of emotional targeting, no understanding of niche segmentation. We've evolved. He hasn't. I nodded. So, professionally? Pass, Julian said flatly. Hard pass. Agreed, Marcy echoed. I turned to Elena, who'd watched the interview through the one-way glass like she was studying a case file. You want my honest opinion? She asked. Always. He's here because the world caught up with him, not because he's grown. He didn't mention your name on the application because he didn't think you mattered. Now he knows you do. That's not respect. That's survival. I swallowed hard. That hit more than I expected, because it was true. Later that night, I pulled up his file on my laptop one more time. His cover letter started with a generic line. I've always believed in the power of brands to shape people's lives. Funny, he never believed in me. I drafted a reply myself. It wasn't cold, it wasn't petty. It was honest. Subject, client relations role. Hi Ryan, thank you for taking the time to interview for the Client Relations Associate position. After careful review, we've decided to move forward with other candidates whose experience and approach more closely align with the evolving values and vision of our company. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. Isabel Quinn, CEO, Q & Company. I hit send, and just like that, I closed a chapter I didn't even know I was still writing. I sat back in my chair, the city skyline glowing just beyond the window, and breathed in a quiet kind of peace. It wasn't the rejection that mattered. It was the power to choose, on my terms. But life, of course, wasn't done with its surprises. 3 days later, I got a LinkedIn message from a woman named Leah Carter. She wrote, "Hi Isabel, I hope this message finds you well. I recently saw your company pop up while searching for branding firms that support women-owned businesses. I also noticed your recent job post. You may not remember me, but I remember you. I used to date Ryan Anderson years ago. I think we need to talk, especially if he's been trying to worm his way into your company. There's something you need to know." My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard her name in almost 6 years. She was the woman Ryan had never loved back when we first met. The crazy ex he always spoke bitterly about. The woman he said stalked him, begged for him, wouldn't let go. Turns out she wasn't crazy. She was a mirror. And suddenly, I was looking into it. I responded cautiously, not knowing what she wanted or what she might reveal. She replied within minutes, "Let's grab coffee. I promise I'm not here to cause problems. But you need the full picture of who he really is and why you're not the only one he left in pieces." We met at a quiet little cafe in Midtown, one of those hidden gems with exposed brick walls, warm lighting, and just enough white noise to keep things private. I recognized her immediately. Leah Carter. Tall, sharp eyes, a kind of tired beauty in the way women sometimes carry pain with grace. She stood when I arrived, her expression calm, but her hands clutched her mug like it was anchoring her. "Isabel," she said, almost like an exhale. "Thanks for meeting me." We sat. No small talk. No fake smiles. Just two women linked by a man who'd underestimated them both. She started slow. "I saw Ryan's name on your company page. I wasn't sure if you were still together or if he was trying to worm his way into something again." I shook my head. "We broke up a year ago. He applied for a job here. Didn't even realize the company was mine." She gave a bitter laugh. "That sounds like him, always assuming he's walking into rooms made for him." I didn't say anything. I let her continue. "Look, I know you probably don't want to talk about the past. I didn't either, for years. But, I saw something in your eyes when I found your site, something I remembered in mine." She paused, then reached into her bag and slid a folded sheet of paper across the table. It was a restraining order, filed under her name. Against Ryan Anderson. Dated 7 years ago. I felt my breath catch. "I know you won't want to believe it," she said softly. "You probably only saw pieces of it. But Ryan, he doesn't just break hearts. He drains people, emotionally, financially. He broke me down to dust before I crawled away." I stared at the document, the black ink swimming. She continued, "I met him when I was launching a nonprofit. He said he loved how ambitious I was, said he wanted to help. We moved in together and suddenly everything I had, my savings, my credit, my confidence, it all slowly became his." Her voice cracked, just once. She didn't apologize for it. I thought I was the crazy one. He was charming in front of others. Everyone thought I was lucky to have him, but behind closed doors... She didn't have to finish that sentence. I knew it already. That hollow feeling, the second-guessing, the soft gaslighting masked as concern. Maybe you're just stressed. I didn't mean it like that. Don't be so sensitive, Izzy. He never hit me, but the bruises he left on my ambition, my voice, my spirit were real. I got out, Leah said, wiping her eye, but I lost everything. Took me 5 years to get back on my feet. When I saw your company, I saw someone who made it out stronger, and I just thought, maybe you deserve to know the full story. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw myself in someone else's pain. Different years, different towns, same storm. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me, she replied. Just don't let him in. Not through the front door, not through the cracks. He knows how to smell kindness and turn it into opportunity. We hugged before we parted. A strange, sacred kind of hug between women who've both survived the same fire. On the way home, I couldn't stop replaying the pieces in my mind. His laugh the day he left me, the debt he casually left in my name as a mix-up, the subtle control over my schedule, my outfits, even my friendships, things I thought were quirks, not red flags. And now he wanted a paycheck from the company that rose from the ashes he left me in. I didn't cry when I got home, but I did something else. I opened my laptop, pulled up his application again, and added one sentence to the rejection letter already sent. P.S. Your actions have consequences. Some of us don't forget, some of us rebuild. Then I posted an update to our company blog. Why we hire for integrity, not just experience. No names, but anyone paying attention would know exactly what it meant. And the next morning, our inbox was flooded. Women, stories, people saying thank you, people saying me too. Turns out, when you tell your truth boldly, you don't just take your power back, you help others find theirs too. The blog post was only meant to be a message to my team and maybe a handful of clients who cared about our values. I didn't name names. I didn't describe his face or detail his resume, but I did tell the truth about the way some people wear charm like armor only to use it as a weapon, about how women are often gaslit into believing we're too sensitive, when really, we're just accurate, and about the kind of quiet predators who target kindness, then mock the ashes they leave behind. The post was titled, "We Don't Hire Red Flags in Niche Shirts." It took off within 24 hours. By the next morning, it had over 40,000 views. By the afternoon, it had been reposted by 2 major women's business networks on LinkedIn and Twitter, tagging phrases like emotional manipulation, startup culture, and founder resilience. Emails poured in from women I'd never met, all with the same theme. This hit too close to home. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I needed this today. And then came the message I didn't expect. From Ryan. Subject, that blog post, Isabel. I saw what you wrote. You didn't use my name, but come on. We both know it's about me. This is vindictive, this is unfair. I made mistakes, sure, but I never deserved to be smeared like this. You have no idea what's going on in my life right now. You've made your point. You win. Now take it down. I stared at his message, my heart beating slow and steady. The same man who once called me fragile now accused me of being vindictive. The same man who said I'd never own anything was now begging me to erase a truth he couldn't stand to see reflected back at him. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to Leah. She responded almost immediately. Classic. Always the victim when it's convenient. Glad he's finally seeing the woman you became. I took a deep breath, logged into our company newsletter platform, and wrote a follow-up piece. Not angry, not reactive, just clear. You win, he said. But this was never a game. In it, I wrote, I didn't build this company to prove a point. I built it to survive. I didn't rise from rock bottom to get revenge. I rose because women like me don't stay broken forever. If my truth makes someone uncomfortable, then perhaps they're finally sitting in the same discomfort they once created. That post? It didn't go viral, but it resonated deeper than anything I'd ever written. 3 days later, Marcy from HR called me into her office with a strange look on her face. "You'll want to see this," she said, spinning her screen toward me. It was a Reddit thread, r/askwomen, with the headline, "Ever had an ex try to work at your company after they dismissed your dreams?" There were hundreds of comments, some sharing stories, some dissecting my post like a case study, and then one, buried halfway down under a throwaway account, said, "I used to know the woman who wrote this. I didn't realize what I was doing until too late. I've lost everything now. I thought she'd never make it. I was wrong. She built something beautiful. I hope she forgives me someday. No name, no signature. But I knew it was him. Forgiveness. That was never the point. I didn't need him to suffer. I didn't need him to say sorry because I wasn't the same girl on the floor of our old apartment crying over his sneers and jabs. I was a CEO now, a builder, a woman who turned ridicule into revenue. A week later, I got a package at the office. No return address. Inside was a small black notebook, leather-bound, the same one I'd used to keep all my business notes when I was first starting, when we were still together. I thought I'd lost it. Tucked inside was a sticky note. "You left this behind. You didn't need it. You carried it all in you anyway." He finally saw it. Too late. But he saw it. And that was enough. After the blog posts, after Ryan's email, after the wave of support from strangers and friends alike, something in me shifted permanently. I wasn't just telling my story anymore. I was owning it. And when you own your story, no one else gets to weaponize it against you. Elena came into my office one afternoon, a coffee in one hand and her phone in the other, eyes wide. "Have you checked your email today?" I shook my head, still knee-deep in edits for a major rebranding proposal. She flipped her phone around. It was an invitation. Forbes. They wanted to feature me in an online series about women founders under 35 who built something from scratch. I didn't submit anything, I whispered. "You didn't need to," she said. "The story told itself." The interview was surreal. I sat across from a journalist named Priya who had this gentle but piercing way of getting to the truth without prying. She asked about the company, my mission, our clients. But then she asked the question that caught me off guard. "What would you say to the version of yourself sitting on that kitchen floor the night he left?" I paused, then I smiled. "I'd say thank you. Not to him, to her. Because she didn't give up, even when everything in her said to. She didn't wait to be chosen. She chose herself." The article was titled, "How Isabel Quinn Turned Rock Bottom into a Global Brand." It wasn't just about the company, it was about reclamation, of space, of power, of voice, and women noticed. We started getting messages from teenage girls, burned-out moms, late-blooming dreamers. They weren't just asking for branding help anymore. They wanted mentoring, they wanted workshops, they wanted a seat at the table. So, we built a longer one. We launched a sister platform, Second Act Founders, a program for women starting over. After divorce, layoffs, family burnout, financial ruin, no degrees required, just grit. And within 6 months, it exploded. Some of our most successful alumni were women who once thought, it's too late. But there's something beautiful about watching a woman reclaim the narrative others wrote for her. Ryan never tried to contact me again, though I did hear through mutuals that he'd moved to a new city, took a mid-level sales job, and stayed under the radar. He wasn't canceled. He wasn't ruined. He just faded. And that was justice enough for me. One day, I was speaking at a conference in Chicago, and after I stepped off stage, a young woman in her 20s came up to me, eyes glassy. "I read your story," she said. "My boyfriend used to say the same things to me. that I couldn't do anything without him, that I was too emotional to lead. I finally left last month. I touched her hand. I'm proud of you. She smiled. I've started drawing again. I want to turn it into a business one day. I reached into my bag and pulled out a card. My assistant's name is Cora. She'll help you book time with our second act team. No charge. She blinked. Really? Really? You don't owe anyone your silence, but you do owe yourself the chance to rise. Back home, I walked into my apartment, bigger now, filled with light and books and plants I somehow remembered to water, and looked at the photo on my entry table. It was me, 3 years ago, holding a small whiteboard that read, "My first client paid me $400. It felt like $1 million. Next to it was a plaque from the state's Women in Business Association, Entrepreneur of the Year. Funny how the same girl who once felt too soft to lead now ran 2 companies and made softness her strength. I sat down at my desk and opened the new email from our design team. It was a draft of our next ad campaign, built from broken, made to last. I stared at it, the words blurring in the best way, because it was true, not just about the brand, but about me. It happened a year later. I was speaking at a private leadership summit hosted by a global tech conglomerate, the kind of invitation I used to daydream about from my cubicle. The room was full of women in tailored suits, notepads in hand, eyes alert, and I stood on stage, not nervous, not pretending, just present. My talk was titled, "What They Called Too Much Became My Superpower." I told them about building from nothing, about rejection letters, late nights, and the invisible bruises left by someone's disbelief, about how the hardest thing wasn't starting the business, but believing I had the right to, and then I closed with a quote I used to repeat to myself like a prayer. They'll call you emotional. Let them. Emotions build empires when you listen close enough. After the applause, I stepped off the stage and made my way to the back lounge to breathe and reset. That's when I saw him again. Ryan. He was standing near the coffee bar, shoulders slouched, half-dressed in some company's logo polo. He was attending, not speaking. A mid-level rep, I guessed, maybe hoping to network his way back into relevance. Our eyes met. He froze. I didn't. I walked straight past him, calm, collected, because I didn't owe him a second glance, let alone a word. But just before I reached the exit, I turned. Not for him. For me. I built it, I said, just loud enough for him to hear. He blinked. What? You said I never would, but I did, without your help, without your approval, without your belief. He opened his mouth, but I raised my hand gently. You don't get to rewrite this. You were a page. I'm the whole book now. And with that, I walked away. Outside, the sun hit me in the face like a spotlight. I closed my eyes and breathed in the moment, not as proof to anyone else, but as a reminder to myself. I made it. Not because he doubted me, but because I stopped doubting myself. That night, I sat on my balcony, a glass of red wine in hand, overlooking a city that once swallowed me whole, and now bowed at my feet. My phone buzzed, an email from our mentorship intake team. Subject: new application. From I was told I couldn't to watch me. Hi, Isabel. I'm a 42-year-old mom of 3. My husband left me last year and said I'd never make it on my own. I've been following your story. I just want to learn how to take the first step. I smiled, because that was the legacy now. Not just the company, not just the clients, but the chain reaction. Every woman I helped another and another and another, until Ryan's voice, once so loud, was nothing but a footnote, a cautionary tale buried beneath the roar of women rising. The next morning, I wrote a new quote on the whiteboard in my office. Some people laughed at the girl who dreamed. Now they work for the woman who dared. Because I do hire people like Ryan sometimes, but only after they've learned what real leadership looks like. And it's never cruelty, never arrogance. It's compassion. It's resilience. It's showing up every day with something they said you'd never have. ownership of your voice, of your value, of your future.